Life Happens is the podcast brought to you by 87%, the innovative digital platform that uses clinical assessments to make mental health tangible, helping you measure, understand, and improve your mental well-being. Hi everyone, I'm James Gwinnett, endurance athlete and the marketing director of 87%, and I have in this series the enviable job of speaking to inspirational people from the worlds of adventure, business, intelligence, the military, sport, and more, getting their take on life's ups and downs, the setbacks that they've overcome, and how they've dealt with failure to get to be at the pinnacle of their sectors, all to help you build positive mental health. Now, this week, it's great to welcome a guest who, it's probably fair to say, has achieved more before the age of 40 than most people have in several lifetimes. A former professional rugby player, he was a try-scoring machine for some of Europe's top clubs, but particularly made a name for himself, starred on the Rugby Sevens circuit. He captained England, played at 3 World Cups, was World Player of the Year, and also defeated the All Blacks in New Zealand. That's an accolade that not many people have on their CV. Since retiring from the game, he, which we'll come on to, is due to injury. He's turned to the world of extreme adventuring. He's sailed around the world and set world records at the North Pole and on Mount Everest, raising millions for charity in the process. Somehow he manages to fit in a high-profile job as a director at PwC. It is a great delight to welcome to Life Happens, Ollie Phillips. How are you, mate? Are you well?
James, thanks, mate. I mean, I'm well. I'm delighted to be here with you, and I think if in future I need you to do my my personal CV, and when I was playing, I needed you to actually sort of speak to coaches. I mean, I definitely got picked more times if you were leading the charge. But yeah, it's brilliant to be here. Thanks ever so much. How am I? Was the question you just asked me, and I think obviously the most common response to that, I imagine, is I'm fine, because that's obviously a typical sort of British response. And I would say to you that, given the context of where we are and what's going on with COVID, and being in lockdown still, even though there is sort of some light at the end of the tunnel on all of this, I would say I am buoyant in terms of what's to come, the opportunities that are ahead. I am certainly feeling the frustrations of Groundhog Day, if that makes sense, of just every single day lacking any real sort of variety. But I'm also grateful. I've tried to approach this whole scenario with a level of gratitude and a sense of optimism and opportunity, rather than trying, if you like, to give in to the, I guess, more common emotions of frustration, anxiety, surrounding everything. So I've tried to be grateful for the fact that I get to see my kids, my 2 incredible kids, every single day, more frequently than I would do if I was on a commute into London. I get to spend time with my wife in our awesome home in Shiplake near Henley, and I'm still grateful for the fact that all my family and my friends are healthy, and that I am able to still keep working and everything else like that. So I'm keeping the glass half full, even though there are definitely moments in my life where I am struggling, to say the least.
I love the positivity. Well, yeah, we've all had difficult moments over the last 12 months, haven't we? But I love your outlook. I really do. Yeah, worth touching on the fact that you're a family man too. Another one on the way. Congratulations. Firstly, you've obviously enjoyed lockdown.
Yeah.
And secondly, how do you fit it all in?
Well, I mean, thankfully, it doesn't take me very long, James. Without getting into too much oversharing. But yeah, we've got our third little nipper on the way. Lockdown was clearly great for us. So we're expecting our third in sort of mid-September. That's the sort of due date for us. So exciting times. And we're not finding out the flavour. We haven't done on our first 2. We won't do on the last, just to keep it. It's probably the only surprise left in the world. And actually, bizarrely, my wife and I think, even though we haven't really probably said it to each other, I think it's this incredible gift, if you like. It's almost like this post-lockdown, post-COVID, hopefully by September, present that we're so excited about, that it hasn't really sunk in. But yeah, how do we fit it all in? Just good time management, James, and just being really fast and effective with what you do.
Oh, it's gone in 60 seconds. Let's set the scene. We played rugby together at Durham University.
We did.
I was probably too busy enjoying myself to take that seriously enough. But you were destined for greater things. What do you think sets you apart as making that jump to professional rugby?
Ooh, blimey. There's definitely an element of good fortune, if you like. I think you. I'm a big believer in you make your own luck in terms of, like, how determined and focused you are on certain things, and if something is a real priority, you will make it a very clear focus point of yours. So, if I reflect back onto the time when we were at Durham, I think I was also fortunate from the fact that I wasn't that motivated or that interested in going out and getting hammered and drinking and everything else like that. Not because I wanted to be a professional rugby player, but just because I just didn't like the taste of it. Like, that was, if I'm honest, that was a real benefit for me. Of, like, I wasn't that motivated by it. I didn't need it to build up confidence and talk to people, and I really hated the experience of, like, and the taste of being drunk and drinking alcohol. So I think that was kind of like, well, I don't feel like I'm really missing out on something here because I don't enjoy it anyway. And actually, there is this, whatever you want to call it, experience or product of, whatever you want to call it, recognition, praise. It's building a bit of momentum here. And actually, if I devote my time to this, it's paying dividends for me. And that was probably why, I guess the differential was, I would be in Maiden Castle, which was our gym, in the mornings or in the evenings, doing an extra session or something else like that, or practicing my passing, while other people were sort of gearing up and getting ready to go to Clute, which is officially the worst nightclub in the world. But yeah, but I blended that. So, and if you like, because a lot of the interlude for people was sort of going out and getting drunk and having all of that, I was happy to miss all that because I wasn't bothered with that. So I used to go to the gym, exercise, do all my bits, so I felt great about myself, I do all my skills, and then I turn up at the nightclub anyway at 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. Obviously, occasionally it was a bit uncomfortable because they're all totally blottoed, but I still got the shared experience of university and going out with my mates and all that sort of stuff. I did it sober.
I was obviously motivated by the wrong things, but that's
Well, no,
another story for another podcast.
Yeah. I think there's obviously, the danger of, getting on my high horse and saying, like, this is all the keys. I just think I was fortunate in the things that I loved and really nurtured, I could still do, like be sociable, see my friends and everything else like that. And the things I wasn't that motivated by, which is, alcohol and getting pissed and whatever else, I actually filled that time with stuff that really excited me and engaged me, which was, exercise basically. And because of that, that was very conducive and supportive and productive towards being a professional athlete and being a professional rugby player.
Of course. And for anyone who doesn't know Clute, you mentioned the urban legend is that it was officially voted the second worst nightclub in Europe, and then the worst one burnt down. I think that was the urban legend.
Not by anyone from Durham, may I add, as well.
So business degree done, Newcastle beckons, and then later Paris. You had a great run with Stade Francais, but Rugby Sevens was the real, your real area of expertise. But now the Olympic version of the game, of course. Perhaps explain to anyone listening who's not aware the key differences.
Fundamentally, the game is identical in terms of the rules, the regulations, how it plays out, etc., etc. The only difference is that there's 7 people on the field for sevens, and there's 15 for a game of 15s in the full version. So, and I just relish and love the sevens more because for me, rugby was all about getting my hands on the ball, running, exercising, which is, something we spoke about that I loved at university, and sevens allowed me to do that more. Playing 15s, I really enjoyed it, especially the bigger games. But at Newcastle, where in the middle of January, where it's bucketing down with rain, freezing cold, blowing a gale, I was a winger out, which for anyone that doesn't know what that is, out wide, away from sort of all the action. Yeah, it was a pretty bleak experience being on a wing in January in Newcastle, where you probably only get the ball once or twice in the game, and on a sevens field, you were chasing the sun all around the world, touching the ball 20, 30 times in a match. And yeah, as a 20-year-old guy straight out of university, kind of living the dream.
And I mean, sevens again. Also, for anyone that doesn't know, 7 minutes halves. You're basically sprinting non-stop for 7 minutes, aren't you? It's so high in so intense, so brutal on the lungs, the body. Is there something mentally needed to push yourself that hard for that period of time?
Yeah, I mean, of course, right. There is a mental focus or a mental application that you need to have throughout the course of the game to get you over the line, kind of thing. Because it's not very long. You're there for a short time, but oh my God, it's going to be intense. And 7 minute halves where you just blow a gasket every single time, that it doesn't ever get any easier. But there's also this sort of realization of this is short-lived, right? Short-term pain for long-term gain. Let's work our socks off and let's make sure we take this to the wire. And thankfully, it was also, I was involved at a time with an England squad that was in ultimately now what's proving to be like the golden era of sevens for an England squad. When I moved into the squad in 2004, we won our first tournament ever in Dubai on my very first tournament. That was the first one we'd ever won. We'd had a little bit of success that was kind of sort of building in 2002, 2003 in Hong Kong, where we'd won a couple of tournaments there, but it really exploded in 2004. And we put England on the map in terms of its sevens pedigree. And between 2004 and probably 2014, which was the sort of 10-year window that I was involved, I'm not saying it's anything to do with me, but we were ranked number one side in the world. We won more tournaments than England have ever won, and so it was just a phenomenal time to be involved in England rugby and England sevens rugby.
We'll come back onto that 10-year period. I'm sure you had something to do with it at least. But before that, I've done a bit of research, and you somehow bizarrely made your international debut for Fiji, playing against none other than the global superstar Joe Nalomu. Please explain.
So everyone loves this story. I mean, it's probably no surprise, but when you play on the World Series, obviously, you're playing all around the world. So when this tournament was in London at Twickenham, and when New Zealand, Fiji, New Zealand, Fiji, all of the Southern Hemisphere sides, but from miles away, Samoa, travel over. If they get an injury or lots of injuries, it's not really, it's not even a solvable issue for them just to add to their squad because it's over 2 days. So they have they've got rid of it now, but they used to have what's called the 17th team within each tournament, and that was basically a pool of domestic players, young up and coming talent that would, if needed, feature as part of the tournament. They could call upon these players, a player pool. Anyway, cut a long story short, Fiji had got to the semi-final in Twickenham against New Zealand, and they were down to 8 players for this tournament. I was 17 at the time. I was in the sort of Harlequins second team academy, and I was part of the 17th team squad. And so I got drafted in for Fiji to sort of be basically an extra body, right? An extra body for the warm-up or whatever else. And there was no intention of them ever putting me on the field unless, it was dire straits and they were down to, they didn't have anyone else. So literally within the first 2 minutes, I think it was Vunimbaka, I can't remember for definite, but he got injured. So their last remaining substitute came onto the field within like 2 minutes of the game happening. So I was fully aware that, oh my God, anyone else goes down here, I'm on, right? Because there's no one else. There's no one else. And then sure enough, I can't remember who it was that got injured, but someone got injured for Fiji with about 2.5 minutes to go. And they were doing a try-saving tackle 10 meters from their line, and they'd done something to their shoulder, stopping one of the Kiwis. So it was a Kiwi scrum 15 meters out from the try line in the middle of the field, and I rolled on the wing, and I was stood opposite Joan Lomu on the opposite side. And the irony of it was Fiji only had in their kit bags left, like, I think it was like a triple XL Fiji top and a pair of triple XL shorts. I literally looked like I was walking on like a tent, like on the field, right? It was ridiculous. And I remember stood there going, please don't give it to Jonah. Please don't give it to Jonah. Please don't give it to Jonah. First thing they do, threw the ball out wide, straight into Joe Lomi's hands. And I thought, this is it. I'm going to die. I'm going to die. I'm going to die. And he was such a legend that he caught the ball. He definitely should have run over me, 100%. But they were already spanking Fiji at this point. And he just cut back and ran straight into the forwards. Totally unnecessary. But obviously, realised, I don't know, maybe he didn't, I don't know, but he realised there was some young snotty-nosed teenager in front of him that he was about to run over and kill. And then at the end of the game, I sort of clapped them all off and was like star-studded, completely star-studded, starstruck by them all. And I remember he came up to me, he went back into the tunnel, came back out, because obviously I wasn't invited back into the change room. So came back out and he signed the ball and gave it to me. And I was like, you legend, you absolute legend. And it still sits in my room now, all signed. Bless him. Now, God rest his soul. But yeah, that was my first ever international experience or international exposure.
That is fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. And maybe, I don't know, maybe he felt sorry for you, but little did he know that fast forward a few years and you'd be the best sevens player in the world. So
clearly, there you go, the grooming grounds.
Tried to take you on, but few highlights then over that period that you mentioned. But talking about the All Blacks, does anything match February 2009 in Wellington at the Sevens playing against New Zealand? Talk us through that game.
Just special. Like when I think about it now, it still excites me now. I mean, we had traditionally not toured very well ever in New Zealand. We'd never been to New Zealand and even got out of the group stages, let alone get through to the knockouts and get to a final. And yet here we were, 2009, in a final against New Zealand in front of a vociferous sort of 55,000 packed Wellington, caked in environment. And nobody expected us to do anything. We'd been absolutely garbage the year before. I think we'd come like 6th or 7th in the world. So nobody expected us to do anything. Yet here we were making some waves, making some statements that season on the series. And this was going to be like a crowning and defining moment for us as a squad. And what made it even more special is that we went 17-0 down within the first half. So we were staring down the barrel of a gun that this was going to go one way. We were going to get stuffed. Everyone expected it. How could England sort of come back from any of that, etc., etc. So for us to go and win that on the hooter, 19, and for Ben Gollings to then kick the winning drop goal, 19-17 to win it, rewrite history. First time England had beaten, not only beaten the All Blacks, but equally beat them in a final in their own back garden. That was special. And I think what made that year even more perfect was that you fast forwarded from February till May, they came back, the series came to Twickenham. We had the same situation again. We're playing, this time roles reversed, New Zealand playing us at Twickenham in our back garden. And they went bang up 19-0 or something like that. And we won that game in extra time. And Dan Norton scored probably one of the best sevens tries ever. It was the sort of baptism of Dan Norton, this world super talent that he's now become. That was his first game, his first statement, a final at Twickenham against New Zealand, and he scored an absolute worldie to take it to extra time. And then Mickey Young dived over in the corner, and we beat them again. So it was just a very brilliant moment in time, if you like, special time. To do that twice in a season is pretty unheard of.
Beautiful, connecting the dots.
Yeah.
And your 3 tries down. I've been to the West Pack. I've been to Wellington, and it is a cauldron. You're 3 tries down. You're in a stadium full of fancy dress-clad, beer-soaked Kiwis, facing supposedly the best side in the world. These are the moments that define us. No one would have blamed you if, as an Englishman, you decided, I'm going to go make a cup of tea instead of playing the second half. But that's not what goes through the head of the world's elite, is it? What are you thinking at this point?
Well, probably oh shit, probably at the beginning, right? It's being like totally honest and transparent. I think what were we thinking? I think we it was it was an incredible time for us as an England squad, and a bizarre time, because if I'm really, really honest, I don't think we were thinking about anything else other than us as a group. We knew that we were in a hostile environment. We knew it was going to be challenging. We knew that, we hadn't given a sort of, good, honest, fair reflection of ourselves and of our own ability and everything else like that in that first half. But we also knew that we had the talent, the capability. We trusted in each other. We believed in the process. I don't think we ever felt that we were out of touch, if that makes sense. But I think there was just this belief as a group that, if we stick to our process, if we trust in our own ability, if we believe in each other, and we work together as a collective unit, we will overcome this. And we'd had sort of glimmers of that in the 2 tournaments before it, which were in Dubai and South Africa. And I guess that's definitely surprised everyone else in the game, but it maybe even surprised some of the people like in our team around, oh, you know what, actually we are good enough, kind of thing. So by the time we hit Wellington, it was just a sort of this crowning moment of momentum and belief for everyone that culminated in us going on to record what is widely regarded as one of the greatest Sevens games. So it was special. It was fun. It was an amazing experience, and I was incredibly lucky to A, be involved in it, and B, to have been captain of the team and the squad at that point in time.
And it's just an important mantra to have generally, isn't it? You've got a mountain to climb, but if you look at it in a defeatist attitude, you're not going to climb it. Whereas if you look at it in a positive way, as in this is not impossible, it suddenly becomes achievable.
Yeah, I think if you look at the mountain as a whole, it becomes quite overwhelming, right? If you stand at the bottom of something and you think, how am I ever going to get to the top of that? It can become overwhelming, and then you can become defeatist and you can give up. I think if you try to approach it more from the fact of actually that's the end goal, but actually what's in front of me now, what do I need to tackle and do over the next 5 minutes, 5 days or whatever, in order to sort of progress towards the summit. So trying to break it down into piecemeal, probably more achievable and realistic targets that notionally in your mind and in your own sort of, I don't know how you like, creativity or belief set is achievable. Like walking 50 steps is achievable and possible and feasible, and I can end up from this point to there. But going from here to the top of that mountain is maybe just insurmountable for me psychologically at this point in time. So, and I think like referencing that back to the game, yes, we had a mountain to climb, but we never focused on the end. We never focused on the, okay, blimey, we're 17-0 down, and what do we do? Because I think you then start to panic and you start to change the game plan. It was more just, how do we get 1 foot back in the game here? How do we move forward? And before we knew it, we were 17-5, 17-12, 17 all, bang, 19-17.
And that led to the World Player of the Year award. You're the best player in the year at this point. You make the move to Paris. I think that was back.
Yeah. I made bizarrely, I got a phone call after that Wellington tournament actually from the then coach, who then became the Australian coach, but a guy called Ewan McKenzie. And I actually thought it was a wind-up from a few of the lads back at Newcastle. I thought they were just having me on. But it turned out it wasn't. Turned out it was real. And when I came back, bizarrely from Wellington, we flew to San Diego for another tournament after that. And when we got back from San Diego, I had like literally 4 days before we were going back on tour again for the World Cup in Dubai. And I flew to Paris on one of those days, went and met Ewan, met the owner of Stad and had lunch with him, a guy called Max Guazzini. And from that point on, they decided they wanted me to look good in pink. So I had to go.
Beautiful kit. And then, a great period at Stad, and then another World Cup beckons, possibly even an Olympics. But the next, I suppose, major turning point in your life was one of abject disappointment. Talk us through the injury.
Yeah, certainly at the time, abject disappointment, because I think, like everybody, I would imagine that is listening to this, or that you encounter, or you have plans, right? You have plans, hopes, aspirations of things you'd like to do or achieve, whether they be big or small. And I certainly had a few bits left in the game that I really wanted to do. And one of those for me was an Olympic Games. Rugby had been announced in 2009, bizarrely at the same time as this sort of New Zealand experience we talked about. It had been announced that rugby was going to be an Olympic sport, and I had played an integral role of that at that point, because we were just at that point, coincidentally, England were number one side in the world. I'd been voted as the best player in the world, and I was England captain. And I played a fairly hands-on role with World Rugby, or the IRB as it was then, in ensuring that we got accepted as an Olympic sport and onto the Olympic program. So I was super excited and ambitious, but maybe a bit hopeful as well, that I could make it to the 2016 Olympics in Rio. I would have been 32 at that point, maybe 33 nearly. So it was an ambitious target, definitely, but one that I felt that I could achieve and was capable of doing. And then unfortunately, as always, someone else or something else doesn't quite adhere to your plans, and mine was around injury. And it was in a World Cup campaign, training camp. I wish I could say that it was a glorious moment, but it wasn't. I was no one around me, trotting at best, and I just dropped to the floor like a sack of spuds because I felt something in my calf, and it turned out I'd severed the nerve in my calf. They didn't really have not really a diagnosis or a way of treating it. They just sort of said, look, sorry, but we think this is it. I think this is all over. So within 3 hours of that happening, all of my hopes, dreams, aspirations had, vanished. And that was very difficult to accept at that point in time. So the honest answer is I don't think I accepted it at that point in time. I think I still believed in my own ability to come back from it and maybe defy the odds and defy the medics and whatever else like that. And all I needed was some time. So I would go and do a whole series of other sort of things and distractions, which we can probably talk about in a minute. But I still believe that by doing that, it was kind of an interlude before I could come back, rejuvenated, recovered from my injury, and have a crack at going to Rio. And wouldn't it be an amazing story to have come back from, the jaws of injury and the jaws of defeat to then playing a World Cup, playing an Olympic Games. So it really, if I'm honest, it probably from that moment in time, it was obviously very difficult for me to accept I've been injured. But I don't think it really sunk in or really hit home or really made me understand the impact that it had on me until maybe 2.5 years later. That long.
Like denial, almost.
You never want to let go of a dream, right? You never, when you believe in something so vehemently and so strongly, and it means so much to you, and somebody else tells you it can't happen, but they can't really tell you why it can't happen. They just tell you it can't happen. That's a very tough pill to swallow, and ultimately you choose not to swallow it, right? You choose to look at other avenues and other ways of proving them wrong and proving yourself right. Every other injury I've ever had in my life, it's been very clear in terms of like, do this, this, and this, and then you'll be fine. And it'll take you this amount of time, and then you try and defy the odds and come back earlier. Whereas there was none of that. It was just, we just don't think this is recoverable, and that was hard, right? That was very hard.
So let's talk about those distractions that you mentioned. How did you make the transition? I mean, was it, and how did it affect you mentally? First of all, that loss, and then was it adventuring or was it business that came first as the next step?
I mean, adventuring came next. I mean, that was the next step. I'd been asked by Sir Robin Knox-Johnson if I would act as a trade envoy, as something he founded a thing called the Clip Around the World race, and he asked if I would be interested in being a trade envoy as part of a deal they'd just signed with 10 Downing Street. and an Olympic legacy program that government had launched, or Number 10 had launched, called the Great Campaign, that championed everything that was great about Britain. So I was like, brilliant, sounds amazing, all over it. What is it? They're like, look, you'll be on the Great Britain boat, you'll go and sail around the world. It'll be 11 months at sea, 46,000 miles, and every port of call that we go into, you will be the Great British Ambassador, whatever you call it. So, sail into Rio, we turn up, we throw a big event. You've just sailed from London to Rio de Janeiro. We'll all do a bit of a talk around how adventure is great, technology is great, business is great in Britain. So, everyone in Brazil and South America, come and invest all your money in the UK economy, because that's it's a great place to be. So I was like, wow, this is awesome, great experience. Go away for a year. It'll give me a year off from the game. My leg will have recovered. I can come back and I can play again. And then equally at the same time, I'll have sailed around the world. And like, what a great narrative this would be of, like, I've left London and the first port that I've sailed to is Rio on this clipper race. And actually, I've come back in a blaze of glory. I've proved myself fit. I've got into the GB squad, and my last port of call on my playing career would be Rio de Janeiro at the Olympic Games. So that was the dream. That was the, like, okay, hold on, I've missed out on this opportunity, but there's still a way of repurposing this and repackaging it and having an amazing life experience at the same time. And I vehemently believe that. I came back, I trained like an absolute dog for 6 months. And then I went to Dubai with like an invitational side as part of like an England A squad to play in the tournament over there. And when I was out there, I just knew. I just knew. My calf wasn't right. It blew up on me, and I just knew that was it. That was it. I was done. Maybe not from, like, if I'd have given it maybe a bit longer or whatever else, but I knew that story was done. In order for people to believe in me, take the risk on me, I needed to pull through in that moment, and I didn't. And as a result of that, I knew it was all over.
So was that the moment? Was that when it hit you that, right, I need something else? And how did you go from that moment to the business world?
I think in my gut that was the moment that I knew I wasn't going to be able to play rugby again. But I think I had too many other distractions going on in my life for me to properly accept it, because I'd filled my life with just stuff that meant I wouldn't really have to think about that decision. So I had agreed, because of my sort of, everyone had seen me being a lunatic doing this clipper race, I'd agreed to go to the North Pole with a children's charity that I sort of support, and set a Guinness World Record in the April. So all my energy is sort of turned and focused on that. So this moment had happened. I was sort of juggling all these sorts of things. I was sort of like, maybe my rugby career will happen. And this is maybe an area of mistake, right? Because I'll never know. But I felt like I gave it my best shot. But I was equally trying to spin a few plates at the same time, rather than focusing all my energy on one thing, because I was trying to make a comeback. And if I made the comeback, everything else would get dropped. But I was contingency planning by saying, yep, let's go to the North Pole and set a Guinness World Record at the North Pole. And I will be one of the captains that leads an expedition up there. And at the same time, at the back of the clipper race, I had been in conversations with one of my crewmates, who'd sort of said, look, I think you go really well at our business. I've never seen anyone that leads a team the way that you lead a team. You have to come work for us. And he happened to be a senior partner at PwC. So he was like, look, we've got a job for you. We'd love you to come here, blah, blah, blah. So I was sort of like, yep, okay, brilliant. So I'd kind of lined up, I'm going to go to the North Pole in April. And then when I come back in the May, I'll start at PwC. And even then, in the back of my mind, I was like, but if it all goes well and I can play rugby again and I'm fine, I'm sure that, I'll be able to delay it, my comeback, and go to the North Pole. And I'm sure PwC would be understanding and supportive of, like, me becoming an Olympian and whatever else, even though I hadn't asked any of them this. But I just was convincing myself that it was going to be fine. So if you like, I still hadn't really accepted it at that point, because I still had these other distractions coming down the line. And it was only after I came back from the North Pole and I sat down at my desk within PwC in my suit and tie and looked out the window, and suddenly it dawned on me of like, you know what, this isn't happening ever again. Like I'm not Ollie Phillips, the rugby player, is no more. Like I'm not a rugby player anymore. That's not who I am. Even though this was sort of 2 years on from the last game that I'd ever actually played for England, it hit me then, and it hit me hard then.
I love that the way that the mind works, and the mind sort of perhaps playing tricks on you in the perhaps in the deep dark recesses of your brain. Maybe you did realize that it was over, and that's why you had the PwC gig lined up. But at the same time, your mind's like, well, what if? I've got all of these other great things going on, and maybe it'll be fine. Maybe. I just love how the mind works, and you're then sat there at this desk, and you've talked about imposter syndrome in the past. Now, I mean, to tell us how that impacted you, because that is one hell of a move from rugby, sailing around the world, the North Pole, to a suit and tie job in the corporate world.
Yeah, I think it was. I'd come from well, as you've mentioned already, right? I'd come from a position whereby I was considered as a specialist, or in like the upper echelons of capability in my field set of being the best player in the world, or captain for England, or just being a professional rugby player. Right, you are in the top 1 percentile of the UK, of the world, that can ply their trade on a rugby field. And I guess I was never necessarily aware of that, but I became very aware of that when I joined in PwC, because I'd stepped out from a rugby field into let's call it a corporate environment, and a very corporate environment, and I joined as a director, so I was expected to be able to deliver and have capability and make decisions and give direction. And yet I had no background, I had no qualifications, I had no credentials in any of the subject matter that I was actually sort of talking around. Right? So, so I was talking to people about tax transformation, or progression onto cloud-based technology, or SOX compliance in the US, all this stuff that A, I had no clue about whatsoever, B, probably had no interest in either, and C, I was surrounded by a group of people that by title were more junior than me, but by qualification, credentials, capability, knowledge, were 50 times more capable than me. And I just found that environment challenging and tough, right? I found that at the beginning, I found that very difficult to sort of come to terms with, of like, well, hold on, like, everything I've done in the past, like, I've meant to have had the answers. Like, someone said, hit that sign from 20 meters away off your left hand and right hand, I would be able to do it, or at least I'd be in the ballpark of, being able to challenge and be capable of doing it all, or whatever else. And then equally, if somebody was doing something wrong in an area that wasn't necessarily my area's expertise, I could still call sort of nonsense on it. I could still be like, I don't know, I can't give you an example, like line outs. Like, I'm not a line out expert, but I can tell if it's going badly, or if it's going well, or if we're not doing anything properly. So you can sort of input and be like, lads, pull your finger out your ass, or whatever else. Whereas, at PwC, I didn't have anything. I had no way of sense checking and verifying if what someone said was right and valid. I couldn't input and edit myself. And so, all of my skill sets became the sort of softer, holistic stuff, which are incredibly valuable, but you don't really realize it at the time, if that makes sense. It doesn't resonate with you, because everyone else has got a core competency, a core qualification that they can demonstrate on the spot.
But there's a theme here in terms of leadership, and there must have been, experiences, your talents, your sort of personality traits, your leadership skills that you took off the rugby field, from the rugby pitch to the high seas, albeit in a very different group of people, and then similarly from that group to the boardroom. So what sort of leadership traits were there in common across those various different situations?
Well, I think for me it was this realization, right, that actually the roller coaster ride that I had been on, and equally that lots of other people go on, is driven around how we feel, right? How you feel ultimately determines the level of success that you believe you've achieved or not achieved, right? Because how it makes you feel, like if you're in an environment where you feel brave, courageous, fulfilled, encouraged, enthusiastic, then you're more than likely going to be you're more than likely to reflect on your capability, your experience, or whatever else as a positive one, and therefore feel valued. Whereas if your experience or if how you feel is insecure, unstable, uncertain, you're more than likely going to be approaching the situation with a negative perspective, irrespective of whether you've done a brilliant job, but just because you feel that way, right? And there's nothing that can change that, if that makes sense. Like that feeling emerges off the back of the context that you are experiencing and touching things and doing things. And I recognize that actually one of the critical components for me was how we feel ultimately determines our emotions. Our emotions will then fundamentally drive and shape our behaviors, and how we behave will dictate our decision making at the end of it all. And so if you like, I became a master, but in inverted commas, but my energy all focused on that. How do I make sure that I create environments where people in which people feel safe, they feel fulfilled, they feel exhilarated, they feel confident, they feel supported, they feel as though they can and I can shape that and deliver that by investing time into understanding what's important to them.
And that brings me beautifully on, because how we feel is the crux, isn't it, in terms of mental health and what 87% is doing, helping people understand, properly measure and understand how they feel. I mean, you've had a quick flick through the app. What are your thoughts on measuring our mental health, so that we, as individuals, we are aware of how we feel, and how is that important in terms of day-to-day life?
I think vital, right? Because I think often it's very difficult for us to put a quantifiable number on like where we are and how we feel and what even if it's not necessarily spot on, if there's going to be criticism, it's still brilliant for you to have a gauge, a metric, so you can explore what you don't know, the classic, but you don't know what you don't know, so you're never quite sure where you are. You're sometimes caught up in the weeds to actually realize that you're neglecting other parts of your life and your own mental health, and because you're caught in the moment. If that in like I'm, I'm working 16-hour days, I'm just absolutely pedal to the metal, but you don't realize that you're not eating right, you're not sleeping properly, you're not speaking to your family ever, you're and before you know it, the whole world sort of crumbles around you, and you suddenly realize, oh my God, it's too late, kind of thing. And that's where I think something like the app and what you're doing at 87% is critical, and just lifting the lid and giving and prompting thought within people and giving them a realization as to where they are in their mental health journey.
Prompting thought, that's a beautiful way of putting it, because that's all it takes, is a little bit of thought every day, assessing where we are, just putting a little bit of action in every day, exercising mental fitness, much like we exercise physical fitness. It's something that can be practiced. Before we do the sort of the quick fire final questions, is there anything else that you're working on that you want to share, or that people should be aware of?
Oh, right. Thanks. Yeah. No, I mean, I'm a massive believer in everything that's happening within 87%. It's something that's very close to to my heart. My company is called Optimist Performance, and that's what we sort of center around and major in, which is actually helping people along that journey of effectively achieving their full potential, like from a behavioral, cultural, teams, leadership, motivation perspective. Like, how do we help you and your teams deliver the best version of themselves day in, day out. That's sort of what we major in. So that's what I'm working on. That's what I'm a major believer in. And that's what I try and bring to whatever environment I'm in, whether that's my directorship at PwC, my Optimus performance business, or my coaching role with Wales Women.
Awesome. Let's go through the quickfire questions. Is there anything that you do on a regular basis that is an absolute non-negotiable to help your mindset or improve your mood?
What do I do to? Yes, there is. What do I do to, as a non-negotiable? It would be every morning I try and wake up and take even 30 seconds to remind myself of what I'm grateful for.
Lovely.
Attitude of gratitude, I call it.
Attitude of gratitude. I love that. And what makes you good at what you do?
What makes me good at what I do? Because it's me, and no one else is better at being me than me. And it's authentic, it's genuine, it's heartfelt. It might not always be the finished and polished article, but it comes from the heart. It comes with a great intention, and it comes with a personal signature rubber stamp of being genuine, authentic Ollie Phillips.
What would you say to a young Ollie Phillips?
What would I say to a young Ollie Phillips? Don't sweat the small stuff. So I used to really worry about what people thought and how I could influence that thinking, because the environment I was in a rugby environment was, you had a coach that picked you, and if you got picked, then you played and you had all that euphoric and exciting experience, and if they didn't pick you, it was a sort of pretty unenjoyable experience. And so a lot of my energy and my time got consumed with worrying and being anxious about what I needed to do, or what I wasn't very good at, or what the coach wanted to see, rather than being centered around actually just what's your X factor, what's your super strength, what's your superpower, like what's got you here, and what do you just need to do more of that's going to just take you even further. And I think for the first half of my career, I focused on all the things I wasn't very good at, and thankfully it was actually that year in 2009 when I got the World Player of the Year, it suddenly dawned on me, throughout that year, just do what I'm really good at. Just do what I'm really, really good at, what I really enjoy, what brings the best version of me to the party. And as a result of that, I'm probably going to get more opportunity, more success, or whatever else you want to call it.
I spent most of my 20s trying to prove that I was the biggest, the best, the strongest, the more of a lad than anyone else. And all anyone can really do is be the best version of themselves. So I love that. Any ideas, people, things, places, books that have inspired you recently?
Oh, blimey. Yeah, I mean, there's so many things that have inspired me, but I guess something it's not actually related to mental health or anything else like that. It's just a change of perception and a change of attitude and approach to my life. And that was a book that I read probably 12 years ago, called Rich Dad, Poor Dad, by a guy called Robert Kiyosaki. And that was all around effectively taking control of your life, owning the process, and being really clear on what your goals are, what your aspirations are, and what you needed in order to fulfill those goals. And equally, the feeling and emotion that fulfillment or success brought you. And so it really shaped my thinking and how I attacked my life on a daily basis around that.
And if anyone wants to get in touch, how do they do that?
Yeah, it'd be awesome. Please get in touch. I mean, the obvious channels of LinkedIn, or Ollie Phillips, or social media, whether it be Twitter or Instagram, at Ollie Phillips 11. And then obviously our website, so optimistperformance.com. Come have a look, join our newsletter. We've got a YouTube channel, and just, we want to create a sea of optimists, a sea of positive people desperate to make change and improve themselves and improve others and support one another. So yeah, please get involved, reach out.
It has been a pleasure. So much So much to take from that. So much positivity, so much energy, so many wonderful stories of obviously success, but then the flip side of that, and coming back from setback, overcoming those challenges, the transitions from professional sport through to the business world, and all of the different ramifications that come from that. Those changes. It's been great. I really appreciate your time.
Top man. Thanks, Jimbo. Thanks, matey. Great to be on it.
Hi everyone, and thanks so much for listening. And of course, a huge thank you to Ollie for giving up his time. Hopefully you'll agree that was a really open and honest account from him of what it takes to get to the top, but also what it takes to deal with loss at the highest level. For Ollie, there was a considerable longevity in learning to come to terms with his injury. It shows that even someone who is considered the best in the world is vulnerable to disappointment and having to deal with failure. In Ollie's case, being forced to start again from scratch was a huge knock, having come from performing at his absolute peak in the sporting world. I took a huge amount from the conversation, but most of all, the importance of believing in our ability to adapt and having confidence in our strengths in times of difficulty. I hope you've taken something from it too. If you have and you enjoyed the episode, please subscribe and share it to help us spread our belief that we should all build mental fitness. And check back soon for the next episode of Life Happens.